Hi everyone, Dave here again, East Rosebud Fly and Tackle. This segment we're going to discuss thread bobbins. There's a ton of them out there. There's also a lot of confusion about what do I use for what purpose. So we're going to discuss in depth basically the anatomy of a thread bobbin, what makes them different, what makes them for different applications. The bobbin's only purpose is to hold thread and to hold it securely. But different applications require different types of bobbins. Yes, you can tie all of your flies with one bobbin. It's not the most efficient way to do it, and also sometimes not the most effective way. For example, are you tying small flies? Are you tying midges? That requires a small bobbin. Are you tying large flies like streamers? That requires a different type of bobbin. What type of thread are you using? Are you using 16-aught thread where you need really fine control over thread tension? You're using Kevlar or GSP where you need to really crank down on that thread. And some people also use floss, lead wire, and even the Wapsi wire in their bobbins. The primary thing about a bobbin is it must fit your hand, particularly on these standard type bobbins, and we'll talk about how to adjust the tension. You need to have the bobbin in the palm of your hand. On these type of bobbins, this is how you can control the tension. The tube should always stay close to the fly, so if you're tying a small fly, of course the shorter, smaller tube allows you to be more accurate with your thread placement. If you're tying a really large streamer fly, where you have maybe a size 2 6X long hook where you're trying to reach all the way to the back and wrap your thread, then you want something that has a longer tube on it. Let's look at just the basic bobbins. The bobbins, the spool holders come in either a plastic, it's a Teflon or nylon, or a bronze type of head like this. The arms can be double arm, like on these bobbins here, or they can be single arm, like on these adjustable type of bobbins. It's a little easier to thread your thread into the tube with a single arm bobbin. While we're at it, let's talk about threading your thread. There are really two different ways. For example, on this bobbin, there are two different types of bobbin threaders. There's the metal type, where you insert through the end, like so, push it all the way through, put your thread through there and pull it out. I particularly don't like these, particularly if you have a ceramic or glass tipped or any kind of a bobbin with a hard insert. These can in time scratch the tube of your bobbin. I prefer, and these are really just an orthodontic, I guess people use them if you have bridges or something like that where it's difficult to clean. Made out of nylon, is virtually indestructible, and they just go in the bobbin the opposite way. You bring them in from the base, thread it through the tube, put your loop of thread in here and pull it through. In my beginning fly tying classes, I hand these out at the very first class to everybody. They're inexpensive. You can buy them in large packs like this. We have them here at the shop as well, but you'll never scratch a bobbin tube. If you're tying and you're breaking your thread often and you don't suspect it's unnecessary pressure on your end, it could be you have a bad spool of thread, but it also could be you have a bobbin tube that's scored or has a nick in it. Try a different spool of thread. If it continues to break, then you've got a bad bobbin. The width is critical on these bobbins, particularly on these standard bobbins. If I take this thread out, you can see how they come packaged. And it's meant for actually different widths of thread spool. For example, this is silk, which is a very small diameter spool. This is your standard thread spool here. The way you adjust these bobbins for tension is you either can bend the arms out or in. You can also, when you put your thread on, before you thread your thread through the actual bobbin tube, if you need additional tension, you can wrap your thread around one of the arms once or twice. If I can get it here. like this. You can wrap it around the bobbin arm before you thread the tube, and that'll give you some extra tension. However, on these types of standard bobbins, the primary tension you apply with the palm of your hand by squeezing it or not squeezing it. Okay, and this is the standard type, old type bobbin. So again, depending on what you're tying, depending on your hand size, you want a bobbin that fits in your palm. They all have a finger rest up here. It's always funny in my beginning fly tying classes, we thread up their bobbins and then I see people tying, holding the thread here with their bobbin dangling. Well, you're not using your bobbin that way, okay? You need to hold the bobbin in your hand, use your finger rest here, and keep your thread close to the hook shank. So this is a proper way to hold it. Now if you're using smaller thread spools like this, I personally would not want to bend these arms out far enough for a standard thread bobbin, although you could. Just use a pair of flat nose pliers and bend these out, and this will adjust your tension on the thread spool. Now the tubes themselves come in different lengths and come in different materials. This is a ceramic tube. Inside of this tube is a ceramic insert. The reason for this is if you use a standard metal bobbin like this has a flared end. Some have a flared end, some don't. Well, if you're using highly abrasive thread like Kevlar or GSP, you will eventually score a metal tube bobbin. It's inevitable. If you're not using that type of thread, it's not an issue. But if you have a ceramic insert like these, a ceramic tube like these Wright bobbins, or Dr. Slick makes a bobbin that has a glass tube insert. You can just barely see it on the end. Renzetti makes a bobbin that has a ruby tip insert. So all of these will resist abrasion from your more abrasive threads like Kevlar and GSP. The different lengths, of course, are depending on your needs. Like I said earlier, if you're tying a midge, then you want to have close control. You want to be able to keep this bobbin in your hand and keep this thread very close to your hook. If you're tying a long streamer, then the longer tube bobbin is extremely helpful for reaching the entire length of the hook. And again, you can spool up wire, you can spool up lead wire, regular wire, you can spool up floss. The flared end is supposed to be for floss. It helps to keep the floss flatter as you're wrapping it. Personally, I've never seen a huge difference in a flared end or a normal end. Let's look at then some adjustable bobbins. There are several different makers that make this. This happens to be the Wright bobbin, which is my favorite. They make it in a shorty, a standard, they make it in a half hitch, which I don't have right now, a streamer, and a saltwater. Some are ceramic tube, some aren't. The reason I like these so much is that I can adjust the thread tension minutely on these bobbins. I'll show you what they come with. Basically, you unscrew the one end, and the package comes with about 4 of these nylon bushings. So if you're using a smaller than standard bobbin or thread size, you can add extra bushings. But all you have to do to use these, put your spool of thread on, put your cap on. Now this cap has small indentations in here. This top clicks within those indentations. So you can screw it on here with your finger. I like the one arm. It makes it easier to thread your thread with. It gives you a little bit more clearance than a double arm bobbin. Alright, so we get that started. Alright, so we have it up here. Simply put our thread through the loop like so. Pull it through and you're ready to go. Now the thing about this is, like I say, you don't have to worry about spooling it with your hand to adjust tension. You adjust tension initially by how tightly you click this bushing down. You can get it where the thread pulls out very easily. You can crank it down enough where the thread does not come out at all. And controlling thread tension when you're tying flies is critical. You need to be tying them at maximum strength that this thread will allow. So I really like these adjustable bobbins. Ceramic tubes are nice for using different threads, and I do use the different sizes. So it's a nice bobbin to have. Another type, which is fairly new on the market, this is from Stonefo. It's a very similar setup in that you have a single arm bobbin, finger rest. I haven't seen it in a variety of tube lengths yet. The screw end on this is just a little bit different in that you have a washer here. It looks like a combination of rubber and plastic, and that again is what provides your tension. I know myself that using an adjustable bobbin like this makes tying so much easier, so much more efficient and so effective. They're really all I use. Of course, you can spend, $9 or $10 for a standard steel tube bobbin, or you can step up to $30 and buy a good adjustable bobbin like one of these. There is another one on the market that I have yet to see. I think it's called a Shayhin or something like that. But the actual adjusting part, it's a double arm bobbin, and there's a part up here that you can adjust the tension on the arm. So that's another interesting type. So think about your needs when you're tying a fly, the type of bobbin you like to tie with, whether you need a ceramic or a glass or ruby insert, or if a plain steel bobbin will do for you. But the bobbin is an integral part of tying flies. Thread is the most important component on a tied fly. So you might as well have a comfortable bobbin, one that fits your needs, one that's not going to wear out prematurely because of the thread you're using. Thanks for joining in. As always, if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to contact us.